picking up, reading for pensions, and his pension said 7
Was that Mark?
to 5 or something.
It was Mark in that vehicle?
Huh?
That was Mark?
In the blue, like a dark color.
Four-wheel drive? His front plate's wrong.
Wow.
I think that's the stuff from yesterday. Okay, it's 7 o'clock. Hi. Hello. We're gonna open the Wednesday, May 8th meeting of the Finance Committee. Tonight, we're continuing what we've been doing over the last few meetings, which is meeting with regard to the budgets. Last night we did the warrants, the preliminary warrants for the special town meeting and the annual town meeting, which are scheduled for June 10th, 7 o'clock at the Abington High School gym. So tonight we'll continue with that. Tonight I think we're going to be going over budget scenarios with the ultimate goal of eventually soon getting to a balanced budget that we can agree on. So tonight, welcome the town finance team to come up if they would like to come up. Thank you. You guys, welcome, hi. We got one microphone working over there. We can always turn these around if we need to. Okay, and then we have some members in the audience as well, some of the folks. So, good evening. Long time no see.
Yeah.
It's been about 11 hours. No, 24 hours, 23 hours. All right. So here we are. I'm just going to give it out to you guys. We kind of talked already about what the goal was to get to a balanced budget. There were 3 scenarios. So I know you guys have been working very hard with the department heads, and I appreciate all of that work for the last week or so. Just on this, I know you've been working on it for some time before then, but so we're interested to see what you guys have all come up with.
Thank you, and good evening once again.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you.
Get the feeling you're living here, Leo.
Especially in this room.
Yeah.
Right here.
That's
Yeah.
true.
All day, all night.
We have spent
All day,
most of the
yeah.
day in this room.
Have
The
you?
past 3 days.
Yeah.
In the past 3 nights.
I hope you're at least like moving your seats at different times.
No, we're,
The scenery
we're
and all
creatures
that.
of habit. In fact, I'm in the same place I was all day long.
Same seats, everybody. Just like last night.
Like last
Same
night, no
seats.
changes.
We tend to do the same thing here too. So, and by the way, Sean should be here at some point. He's just running a little late. So, all right.
The sheet
have
that
at
we're
it.
handing out is very similar to what you saw last week. We got rid of the whole right-hand section because it wasn't relevant to tonight's topic, and we needed to do that in order to expand it so that we could begin to input line by line the various effects that these scenarios create.
Okay.
The left-hand side is still the same. It's the original budget numbers and the dollar amounts by department under each of the different scenarios that we were looking for them to come back with cuts on. And so the right-hand side is our capture of the information that they gave back to us. So how would you like to proceed? Shall we go from the top down, or?
Yeah, I think so. Just let me take a quick look. So on the left side, see that percent increase? That's a percent increase from 2013 actual approved, or actual whatever, to 2014. That's percent increase, or decrease, whatever. Percent category, that's where we were talking about out of the whole entire, well, out of the budget.
Out of the portion of the budget that we have to create the cuts because there are fixed components that we can't not touch.
Okay, so that's the portion of the budget to be amended, that we can amend. That's what that 1, 2, 3, the 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth column is that. And then actual deficit is, it's kind of like their target to hit.
Well, that's the entire amount that we're short of, the million,
Okay, entire.
60,000, I think it is.
That's that
That's the
actual
whole
scenario.
deficit.
And then scenario 1, which we know the definition of that, but for anyone listening, the scenario 1 that we're going to talk about is where we take the snow and ice deficit and take that out of stabilization with the approval of town meeting. And scenario 2 is taking not the entire snow and ice, it's a portion of it.
That's correct.
Okay.
Can
All right.
you just
good.
give,
Go ahead.
Can you give the exact figure for scenario 1 that would be removed from stabilization?
I think I have it.
Yeah, I have it here too. It changed a little bit because of the allowance for abatements. When we first handed out information to you, we had mentioned that we had an estimated figure in there of $400,000, and the Board of Assessors has since set that figure at $380,000, so that's $20,000 to the good, creating now a deficit of $1,063,290. The one that we would have originally handed out to you would have been a deficit of $1,083,290.
Yes. So that's the revised total budget, total deficit.
Yes. Now, I will say that when we distributed this to the department heads, we were still using the estimated number, so they worked off of the the beginning data that we sent to them. We didn't resend this and rework it, as we were already getting returns, if you will.
Yeah, it'd be hard to
But
change
it
that
doesn't
midstream.
really make an awful lot of a difference throughout the whole budget.
So
Yeah.
what is the number, though, for scenario one impacts? What is the amount that would be removed from stabilization?
That hasn't changed,
That's
because
not
that was the,
552, 156?
no,
No,
the
I'm sorry.
531, 134 is what we would request to withdraw from stabilization, leaving a deficit of 532, 156,
Yes.
which would be covered by the explanations in scenario one.
And the amount of, for the next column, scenario two impacts, the amount of, I know that it was an average.
Yes, the 5-year average of the snow and ice deficit, and that number is $351,305, leaving a deficit to be made up of $711,985.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, yeah, so why don't we, and so then, and then this, the impacts are what we have to the right. Okay.
I would want to preface this, however, in saying that we just wrapped this up late this afternoon. We have not even sent this back out to the department head, so they have not seen how we have captured their data and put it here, but it's as accurate as we could figure it out. Obviously, when they see it, there might be a little tweaking,
Okay.
things of that nature.
We understand that,
Wait,
yeah.
a little tweaky.
Well,
Because you changed some of their numbers, or?
No,
are
we
they-
didn't change the
Okay,
numbers. I mean, we might have not captured their description
Okay.
or whatever.
Thank you. Everybody else ready to go?
Yeah.
Okay.
Town meeting is the first item here, and that's pretty well a fixed expense. It was very small dollars that we're looking for from them in the first place, and so when we get down to the accountant's area, you're going to see that where we got some money, and the accountant's budget will cover that. So that means that the budget of $2,060 can stand as is. And that's going to be the case with several of these real small type items.
$2,060.
Um,
Are we on, no. We're on the town meeting. It was so, it was so much more last year. Okay, I'm confused here. I'm confused already.
That election account,
Say again?
that election line item, so that town meeting and elections were separate.
Oh,
Ha-
okay.
So
halfway-
that's further down.
It's further, yeah, that's right, we already talked about that, that's right,
Halfway
I'm
down
sorry.
the page, there's another
See elections.
20,800.
Okay, so that, for 2014, that budget line item is only $2,000, $2,060.
Yes, and it
Okay,
can
so
stand
then-
as
okay,
is.
yeah. All right, stand as is. Okay.
In the selectmen's budget, I think the way to go through this might be for me to hit the middle column first for scenario one, then the scenario two, and then the full
full.
effect.
Okay.
We couldn't quickly move these
Flip-flop.
columns around because there's a whole bunch of formulas built in, and we didn't want to destroy that.
Understood.
So the in order to capture the reduction in the expense in the selectman's office, some of that would have to come from salaries, and some of that would come from training that's in the budget that will be removed, and a small amount from supplies.
When you make a reduction in salary, how do you make that kind of a reduction in salary?
Well, it's really a process of elimination. After you've exhausted all the possible expense that you can wring out of a department line, you've only got one thing left, and that's salary.
Right, but what I'm asking is, if you're,
Can you reduce someone's hours?
can you just reduce someone's salary?
Well,
Because that's not a person.
no, it's not a person,
2,999.
no.
I know we have a.
The issue here is that many of these reductions that we're going to go through are potential impact bargaining issues, because there are many unions involved here. And then beyond that, whatever further cuts we have to get to, depending on how large they are, we're going to have to find a way to save that. I don't have all the answers as to how at this point in time, but there is no further money, so if we go department by department, these are the cuts that we'd have to make.
We'll have to
But
work it out.
you don't really,
We have some thoughts, but
right,
at this point,
it's
we have, you know,
stuff you'd have to bargain.
yep.
Much of it would have to be bargained. Most people are covered by some sort of a union in town
Right.
today.
Would that mean we'd have to go back to bargaining and, like, open up a contract and that type of thing, or?
Well, I guess, I'm a little bit of a novice here, but I understand it's called impact bargaining,
Correct.
as opposed to, you're not bargaining to try to set a contract going 3 years. You're
Okay.
impact bargaining because you have no
But you
money.
have something, okay.
If you remember, we did it in the past with the furlough days, and it was
Okay.
impact bargain with all the unions and the non-union people.
Okay.
I mean,
So it can be done, it's just a matter of, a lot of work to be done, but it certainly can be done.
Okay.
While we're on.
I just think we're going to probably end up asking, might as well ask that question now, because it's,
yeah, because it's going to keep coming up
It's
and
gonna
up
keep
and up,
coming
so
up.
we should cover it all on the first swipe.
go ahead, Chad.
When the impact bargaining is happening, is they're giving something, the union is giving something, what's their return? Is it just jobs are saved?
Well, again, I'm a little bit of a novice here, but if we were to go back to the time it did happen, we went 2 years of furloughing. Now, many, if not all of the unions that, well, I will say, I think all of the unions that could, I mean, police officers can't furlough. Firefighter personnel, they don't furlough. But there were other unions in town that did agree to furlough. Other people who aren't covered by a union, I guess, can simply be told you're going to furlough. And if that isn't the case, if people aren't willing to, and we still have to cut salaries, then you are having to cut a job. There's nothing else left.
Just while we're
But
on
in-
that, like with the furloughs, when we did that before,
Yep.
the only thing is then you get to the year where, well, now we don't have the furloughs.
Correct.
And
It-
everything increases
correct.
the following,
Yep.
and that's kind of the
Right.
problem I see with doing asking people to do furloughs. One is that they've already done them.
It's
Yeah,
not a
so I think it
long-term
might be hard
sustainable thing.
I think it might be a hard sell.
Yeah, it's just an attempt to avoid
Right,
layoffs, to avoid, unemployment. And I know last time it was impact bargained, it was done with the spirit of to try to protect each unit and each employee to avoid layoffs. So it wasn't a give and take, it was more, I'll give because it's in the best interest. It saves the unemployment costs and it saves a person.
And we've only thrown that out as a possibility.
Yeah.
That hasn't been discussed
We
with
haven't
anyone.
discussed anything.
No, I just wanted
Yeah.
to kind of bring up the fact that we have done it before, and now we're back in the position to do it again. So
Possibly.
to possibly, or looking at that as an avenue, knowing that everything carries forward and
Right. It's not a
you know, when we get to-
long-term,
so even if we get 2 years of furloughs, when we get to year 3, our costs have had 2 more years of increasing, and then, but now we don't have the furloughs. So then do we then ask again to furlough, It just seems like a dog chasing its tail. with the
unless
furloughs.
revenue were to increase and expenses were to be more closely managed.
From your lipstick on its ears, I guess.
Just telling you the way it is.
I know.
That's
I'm
how
just
you would cure
wondering,
that.
like,
That's how you would cure it.
How realistic. being able to do that is what your feeling was on that.
Mhm. So, I mean, the bottom line, at least for this evening, we're going to identify to you what would have to come from salary. We do not have all the answers of how it would come from salary, and there'd be the need for impact bargaining. You'll see that further as we get down. I'll point out a couple more. The next two items are, again, very small. They're kind of we decided that we'd try to help out the Finance Committee and not ask them to cut, and so the accountant could cover that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. But also the reserve fund. The reserve fund in the Finance Committee were small amounts, and there's some coverage that the accountant has offered.
And if I could state something about that, just for those who are listening, I mean, the reserve fund is something that the Finance Committee controls, if you will. It's not used by the Finance Committee. It's used if there's some sort of emergency need within the town, and departments can come to us and take that. So if that were to get reduced from the 20,000 that it is, which maybe it would just be less money available sort of in a emergency account. And the $54, that if that had to come from the Finance Committee, I would just want to know where we are with our $2,900 budget. But anyway, so I appreciate the fact that accounting is offering to cover that. But if we had to reduce the bigger of those two, the reserve account, if we had to, we could. It's just that we'd have to watch that closely because there would be less for emergencies as the year goes on.
It's not for our salaries.
Exactly, it's not
There
for
are
our
no
for our
Finance Committee salaries.
zero salaries. Thank you.
Sure. Brings us to the town accountant's line, which is where we're getting some of this funding, and that's because there is a full-time position in that office, so it's scheduled at 32 hours. However, the individual who's filling that position at this time only works 28, so we're going to take that 32 down to 28, and that is how we derived some of this money to cover some of these other small things.
So that position is currently slated for 32, but the person doing it is only working 28, so
Right.
that gives you a little bit of a...
So there's no impact, if
Okay.
you will, to that individual, but
Okay.
it does.
It frees up those funds.
Do you need? Yes.
So when,
Oh, go ahead.
so when you, the funded for 32 hours, but you're gonna actually pay 28 hours, that doesn't leave a cut in 7,351?
No, because that individual is only working the 28 hours and is happy to only work the 28 hours. I think the reason it was always carried at 32 is if that individual wasn't the one working, it's still a full-time position, and it might be hard to find someone
Right.
that would want the same type of hours as the person presently holding the position.
So does that wipe out that 7,351?
It does, so we better keep that person.
Well, the 7,351, that's the total deficit. We're kind of talking about all the scenarios now, or just scenario one?
It's just scenario one.
Okay, it covers that, got it, okay.
Yeah, that's an important thing. The accountant's ability to be able to cover some of the other people's, you'll see in some of
on
them.
scenario one,
Some of
really.
them it's been covered, well, on these real small ones,
Yeah.
they're covering all three scenarios. But as we get deeper into it, you might see an area where only scenario one can be covered with this money, but if you jump to scenario two, now the accountant needs to cover more
Of their
and has
own.
to use more of their own savings to do that, if you will. In the assessor's office, going through scenario one first, which is that middle column, the thought there would be to reduce some of the training, to reduce updating some of the maps, and to cut the estimate used for maintenance on the town vehicle and gas.
By reducing the training, are we putting ourselves in jeopardy in some way?
Not really this year.
Okay. Again, it's not something we could do going forward, it's sort of a momentary, temporary. How about the things like the tax max? Is that,
Yeah, the updates of the maps, we're required to do that every year by the Department of Revenue. And sometimes when we're going through subdivisions and creating the maps, we find errors, maintenance that has to be performed on the map itself. We will be looking at that to slow that down, but we will still do the subdivisions and new lots required by DOR.
When's the next valuation year, Jeff?
Revaluation would be 16, we just had one 13.
and then you would just carefully watch maintenance and gas on the, as much as you can, I mean, just
True.
try to drive less.
Well, we have to do our inspections.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to get out there.
Yes.
Just to lump those different properties together, so he's only making one
Only
trip.
take right-hand turns.
That's
Yeah.
true.
Or is it left?
I think it's right, so you don't
Right.
cross in front of traffic, it's
Right.
right-hand turns.
And on the second scenario, it would be scenario 1 plus. I have some money for commercial appraisals when we have an ATB case or something large like that. So I feel I can reduce that amount somewhat. And that's what I've done in scenario 2. And scenario 3 would be all of scenario 1 and 2, plus a reduction in salary.
And then you're really hoping, in scenario 2 and in the actual deficit, you have to be really hoping to not have any issues with those ATV cases.
It's not taking all of that commercial appraisal, I can't do that, but it is taking a good portion of it. Yes.
Just to understand, when you're talking about commercial appraisal work, do you guys make money to do that, or is that just you have to do it by law? You don't charge to do appraisals?
No, this would be in case someone came in, they filed an payment, we have ATV, a large commercial property Stop and Shop, and those things of that nature. It's very hard to appraise.
Okay, it's just additional work that you'd have.
Yes. And not for myself, it's outside work,
Oh.
outside vendor.
Got it. And Jack, how many people are in how many employees are in the assessor's office?
Myself, full-time, 35 hours. I have a full-time clerk, bookkeeper clerk at 32 hours, and I have a part-time clerk at 20 hours, both union positions.
So if you had to reduce that salary by $1,093, that salary, it would be an impact bargaining kind of thing again, or?
Most likely not.
Okay.
I'm not in the union, so I think I would take the hit.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you, but hopefully we don't go there. Thank you, Jack. Any, guys have any questions? for that line item? Okay. Thank you. Now we're down to collector treasurers.
So I'm going to put my collector treasurer's hat on just for a second.
Yes.
Under scenario 1, we would need to reduce salaries by just over $2,000. In addition, I would cut out all travel and education. I normally go to UMass, to the collector treasurer's school each year. I am now certified, and I can afford to skip a year without impacting my certification. I would also reduce some fixed costs within the office. I won't go through each one. I just looked at them very closely and think that I can do this. It's always a little bit iffy because some of these things, they're not controllable. They're how many paychecks are going to be issued in the town, and I got to pay that bill. How many items am I going to mail, and I have to pay for postage. But because of the way government accounting is, you have to kind of estimate each line and make sure that you have a couple $100 more than you think you might need. And you find yourself doing that for each line because you don't know which ones you're going to wind up short in or over on. And you try to be able to control all that within your own budget without having to then go at the end of the year to say, please, someone else give me some money. So when things have to be done that way, and you estimate, it's prudent to estimate over what you think you're going to need to pay. But the risk is that you really don't know what that number is until you get down to the end of the year, right down to the very close. I mean, I don't even know what it is today for June 30th, because there's still lots of activity happening. But anyways, I would cut those expenses and pray for the best, and cut out those other things that I mentioned in scenario 1. In scenario 2, it's the same expenses. Now we just have to increase the salary line. And same thing in the full deficit. It has to come from salaries.
And I know we've asked, how would you go, do you have hours in the office that can be adjusted, or?
I would take the hit on the first one. I don't know about the second scenario or the final scenario.
Thank you, Leo. Sorry that it has to go down that way. Hopefully, maybe things will turn around, but appreciate that. Okay. Anybody else?
But I think it would be through furlough days, because I'm not losing it forever, hopefully. Hopefully there are better times ahead.
Yeah.
And that's important to say, and that's probably the case in all of these.
And I mean, maybe I've got my rose-colored glasses on, but, you know, if we're talking about a 12-month budget,
Mhm.
and we have to consider like a furlough days or whatever, maybe by the time we get to a certain part of the year, you wouldn't have to take them up. But I don't know how it goes.
Maybe.
I mean, I don't know how it goes.
You know, it's a funny term, because typically with furlough days, as well as, quite frankly, with vacation days, and I'm sure you're all familiar with this, in order to be out of the office that day, you work extra hours several days before and several days after your return.
Yeah, so you end up
Because the
working
work
the
doesn't
hours
go
anyway.
away, so, you know, it's just a,
Yeah.
I think it's just a term.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Thank you. Anybody else? Speak up, you guys, if I don't see you, so. Okay.
Town council, under the first scenario, for what would have to be cut, there was some money that the accountant felt could be used to cover it. In the second scenario, the accountant could cover a portion of that, but then we'd basically have to look at cutting back the legal budget. And in the full range scenario, we'd have to cut that legal budget a little bit more. Now, where we've come up with, I think, the justification, and I said the other night that legal is a tough number to put your arms around, because you never know what's going to come up. But we do know for a fact that in this past year, we had some legal expenses that we wouldn't anticipate having again this year. So we're hopeful that we wouldn't exceed that, but there are no promises
you
when
never
you
know,
talk about
right?
legal. All
We may
types
not
of
have the
different
same
things
ones,
pop
so
up,
it'd be,
don't they?
hopefully,
Yes.
so
Yes.
everyone just has to be really nice and not cause any legal troubles. But I mean, I know I'm kind of joking, but go ahead, Barbara, go ahead, ask a real
Sorry.
question.
You guys are gonna be sick of me by the end of this. Accounting to cover, how?
From those funds that were made up the difference in those 4 hours.
Okay,
Because that's in the budget. So in other words, the accountant's budget would be reduced even further, and this budget wouldn't be touched. That's what we mean by that.
So if you look at scenario 1, the accountant's budget would be responsible by proportion for 3,306 in that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7th column. So if you look at column number 7, where your scenario 1 shows my dollar amount that I would be responsible for, by cutting that salary back from 28 to 32 hours to 28 hours, I'm actually above that number.
you're at the 7,351.
As opposed to
3,351.
3,300.
Right, and
So,
in addition to
we-
that, I took out some supplies and an education program
Okay.
that's not required.
So where we see accounting to cover, it's coming from this
Correct.
7,351 That's the difference of the hours.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you for. Okay.
Reduce, so that brings us to information technology.
Yes.
In talking to the department head there, there is money that is sitting there in the event that we need new equipment and things of that nature.
I recall that.
Each cut would come from that line. It is obviously a risk if we need to buy a lot of new equipment, because each one of these cuts reduces that line.
And that's just a department of one, right?
It is a department of one individual,
Yeah, one individual, right.
but most of the expense in that therefore comes from, software
Other.
licenses, expenses, so forth and so on. But this was from the one area, the only area that he could even consider is the amount of money that was in the original budget in the event of a computer breaking and needing to purchase a new one, or a printer breaking and needing to purchase a new one, things of that nature.
Okay.
Tax title, we have the accountant to cover the very first amount, I guess the second amount, but, I mean, we can easily reduce the tax title number. And then we just can't spend as much. But I haven't exceeded it in the past couple of years, and we've been extremely fortunate in that we're actually collecting a lot of that money without having to expend too much.
Okay. Well, that's, okay.
Town clerk. Accountant can cover the first scenario. If it goes to the second scenario, the accountant can't cover any of it, and therefore the full amount has to come from salaries. And in the full deficit, more has to come from salaries. Now, right now, there is the clerk's salary, which you really can't touch. That's kind of voted on town floor.
That's the one that's in existence, same as 2013, or
In existence,
the clerk's salary?
yes.
Is it, because we were talking
It
about
was
it.
voted last year, and that's the salary of the clerk.
That's what we're talking, okay, yep.
You can't touch that, but
Right.
there is money in there for a part-time position, and so this would just leave less money there for a part-time position. No one has been hired for that position yet. As you know, the clerk was just confirmed through the election of a week or two ago.
And I just want to say that the clerk has asked that that request for the 3% that we talked about last night on the warrant be removed. That was put in under different financial times.
Yep.
So I just want you to know that.
Okay, thank you, thank you. So in scenario one, accounting could cover the town clerk's portion, but beyond that, we're into reduction of salary of that part-time person who is not yet hired,
Yes, we are.
would like to be hired.
And the reason for that is because in scenario two, the accountant's commitment of how much they have to come up with is a larger number than one. So they need to keep,
Yeah.
they can't give that money out to other people. They need it to take care of their own deficit.
The salaries in the town clerk's office, it's a full-timer, and
There is a part-time, there's money, if you go back to a year ago, there was a full-time clerk, and then there was actually there was another full-time, there was a full-time town clerk elected, and then there was another full-time individual.
yeah, that was cut away.
In the original budget, the full-time clerical person stepped up as the interim town clerk, who has now been confirmed as the elected town clerk. But in producing this FY14 budget, that full-time clerical position was cut to a half-time. And this money, which has to come from salaries, will have to come from that position by reducing the amount available to hire someone for additional coverage in the office.
So I'm just throwing out a scenario. If the elected town clerk is out sick,
Yes,
then you have a part-timer to cover that.
yes,
One part-timer to cover.
you do. And also when
And
the
you'd
town
be
clerk is on
reducing
vacation.
hours from a part-timer not yet hired.
Yes, there'd be less money available to hire. You might not reduce hours, you might pay a lower hourly rate. It's hard to say how that would transpire. But also, one other point is that you don't necessarily have to close the office if the town clerk is out sick. That individual, if their schedule allows, can work the full day and not work another day, so you don't necessarily exceed your hours.
Yep.
Is that person gonna be certified to give out vital records and stuff like the town
I
clerk is?
really don't know. I think that, oh, wait a minute, the town clerk is here.
She is.
I forgot about that.
Leanne, do you have?
That person will only be able to use my schedule. So they would be able to swear people in.
They would not. Okay. Does-
But when you were the assistant, you were able to do it, right? Okay.
So
that
the
leaves-
person in the office now is not certified or trained to?
There isn't anyone in the
Oh,
office.
that's right, that's right. If we were to hire this person, they obviously would not currently be able to do,
Part-time, no, the idea was to have that person,
right.
if it was full-time, and I don't know that I would find a part-time person that wanted to take on all that responsibility.
Okay. So to be clear right now, Leanne, you're the only one in the town clerk's office right now? Okay.
There's no part-timer now. So if
That's-
Leanne's sick now,
Don't talk.
Yeah, yeah, so that's
we
confusing.
close the office?
Mhm.
Yep,
It's been that way since the retirement.
since, since Linda left. Okay, so in scenario one, just to recap, in scenario one, town clerk stays, we still attempt to hire a part-time town clerk, assistant town clerk, or clerk, assistant. When you get to scenario two, we would still have a full-time town clerk, and whoever we could hire, we would have to reduce either their hours or their rate. But that would give you a second person, but at a lesser abilities, if you will, capacity or something. Okay, right. And so right now, we still only have Leanne in there, okay.
Mhm.
Okay. You guys good with that? Is that clear?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, elections, which is that other part of the town meeting line item, which is why there's no zero, okay.
If I could.
Yes.
I'll cover all four. Elections, registrar, planning board, and zoning board are all such small amounts that all three scenarios can be covered by the accountant in what we've been previously discussing.
And that's the same in scenario
Except for the.
one.
Except for,
Scenario two, and
Yep.
Should be the same.
particularly in, hold on.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Reduction in salaries for scenario three.
Okay, actually,
Yep,
So you were good for the middle section.
yeah, I was good for the middle section. The planning board and the zoning would have to impact salaries, sorry about that. And I guess this needs to be changed.
Salaries, yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and then on the full scenario, that would have to be reduction of salaries as well. Sorry about that. We're talking about planning and zoning.
so in the column under actual deficit impacts, where it says accounting to cover on planning and zoning, that's, it really should say reduction in salaries, got it. And the amount you could find over here, it's like $729, $840, got it. So for both scenario two and the full impact is reduction in salaries for those line items?
Yes.
Got it.
Next is the town office building. That's the money that it takes to keep this building operating and in great shape.
What salaries are in there? I see reduction in salaries.
Well, it would be reductions of someone else's salary here in town hall. There are no
Yeah,
salaries
I didn't think
in
so,
the
that's why I was
town
wondering where that
building.
came from.
But it's the only thing that can be reduced, we felt at this time.
Because you're under a contract, like with the cleaning and it,
Well,
It's actually, we always overspend in that account. It's, you know, we don't have enough for general repairs, say, set aside, so something goes on and happens, and we always end up asking for transfers at the end of the year. So we know that what we're asking for in FY14 is not quite enough, therefore we don't feel we can cut from that budget. So therefore we went to salaries,
Someplace else.
someplace else, town hall salaries, to be determined.
Yes.
What happened with one of John's meetings? He mentioned there was an issue with the contract.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we're actually out to bid on a new contract for cleaning of all 3 buildings, town hall, police station, and library.
They did increase a 3% cost of living without our knowledge.
So that's
That's
still in there,
correct.
though, we're still paying that.
Well, no, we're not, we'll be holding it against what we owe for the remainder of this year. And it's out to bid, as Leo said, bids are due the end of the month.
Town report and North River and ADA are all being covered by the accountant in all 3 scenarios, by the accounting office.
For North River and ADA. Got it. Okay.
So then, just by way of a summary, we have shown you in this, bolded here in this next couple of lines, that all of the salary reductions that we've just talked about in scenario 1 total $13,650. If scenario 2, it totals $21,521. And in scenario, the full deficit, it's $24,487.
And it's not, I know the explanation there is reduction in salaries, but it's reduction in salaries and expenses, because it's
No,
not.
this is just the salary
Oh, this is
portion.
just the salary portion,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah, so that's basically what we have to come up with under each of these scenarios.
Again, being, so that's not telling you, because truly what you've come up is if you added up all these cuts in scenario 1, you've hit those, and the reduction to salary is this impact.
Well, as we went through this, we identified things that
beyond
we can
salary.
cut
Yeah.
for expenses.
Yes.
And then we talked about how, okay, we can't cut expenses anymore, so now we're into the salary line.
Right.
If you go back through this and you add up all the salary line cuts that we said we'd have to make,
Yep.
under the scenario 1, it's a total of $13,650.
Right, and so my point is, that's the amount that would have to be reduced from salary.
Yes.
You're actually reducing further budgets because you've got expenses in
Yes,
there
oh,
as
yes.
well.
Yes.
So that's not I just wanted to make it clear, that's not the total of all
No.
the impacts, it's
No.
just the salary impact.
That is correct, yes.
Yes.
And so these are, it's just kind of a nice summary,
Yep.
so you can see what it is we have to do. We have not determined how we're coming up with this,
Right,
just that that's the amount that would have to be derived from this
from salary.
in each of these.
That'll impact your services.
Mhm. Okay, that's a good sort of like pause there
Mm.
to show that. Okay, and now we're kind of getting into,
Now we get into the big guys, the big areas. First one is the police department. The, even in scenario 1, the chief's thought here would be that he'd have to reduce a position.
through attrition.
He would do that through attrition, therefore you're not impacted by having to add on the additional unemployment costs that you might if you were actually pushing a person out of a position.
But we'll be down 1 officer.
Correct.
Because the cut in scenario 1 is 53,123.
That's right. Yes.
So that's a total reduction of 1 police officer. They would go through attrition, but we wouldn't then hire to replace that person.
That's right.
So we wouldn't be high, and just to extrapolate that on, we wouldn't be hiring somebody now, so that we could put them through the academy now, so that they would be, you know, useful, if you will.
Right. Well, the retirements, the attritions, as I understand it,
Yeah.
the retirements, there's going to be some retirements in FY14 in the early part of the year. And
Delay
therefore,
hiring.
that, once that individual's retired, it will not be replaced.
Got it. Understood.
Now, scenario 2 is the reduction of that, that officer through attrition, as well as the need to reduce overtime to gain the other roughly a little less than 20,000 necessary to hit that mark of a reduction of 70,822. What that means is not filling a shift for a possible vacation or a sickness or something of that nature. That, of course, results in fewer officers on the street.
As in two.
Well, I mean, no, it'd only be one. I mean, what you have typically on the street, as I understand it, and, you know, the chief, of course, would be the best person to give you details, but we've quizzed him, and so I think we have some pretty good information here. There are basically 2 patrolmen and a supervisor in cars on the street in most circumstances. If they're not filling for a sickness or a vacation day or something, now you've only got 2 vehicles on the street. Clearly, that would only be done in your lighter type situations. You know, I don't know what those are completely, but I would assume that's, you know, a Monday through Wednesday or through Thursday daytime shift, which might not be quite as hectic or busy as maybe a night shifts, something of that nature. But again, the chief is the best person to describe that to you. And of course, I don't think you'd ever do that on a weekend.
But that's how they would make up the
That's how you
difference
have to
between
do it.
53,000 and 70,000.
Yes.
Would be that
Yes,
17 grand savings by not filling that third
by
person.
not filling some shifts, yes.
In addition to the not rehiring
Yes,
the
yes.
police officer who
Yes,
retired.
and now you might, as I did, when I first saw this, reading it in an email, I said, well, how come we're not trying to cut the overtime first before an officer? And it's a simple answer. Cutting the overtime doesn't get you the full 53,000 that you need. So you have to go with the
Putting
big
more
cut
over.
first, and then the overtime supplements to get up to that next level.
Gotcha. Any questions, you guys? Oh, okay.
The fire department, I will summarize this, but as you'll see in the audience, the fire chief is here, so you can quiz him to fill in any of the blanks. I'm sorry, I didn't, thank you.
What?
I didn't get to
Oh,
the
the
full
fire-
deficit
Yes, thank you.
in the police, which now you're up to
I read it.
two officers,
Through attrition.
and resulting in some shifts with only 2 officers on the road.
So in the full scenario, reducing 2 police officers through attrition, with some shifts that will now have only 2 on the road, but at that point, now you're down 2, so you're probably replacing with some, you're not reducing your overtime in addition.
No, because you're down to 2 officers.
gotta make
But,
up
you know,
some.
there's vacations and sickness and
Right.
stuff like that, and you might not have personnel to cover or
Yep.
money in the budget to cover.
But so in lieu of further cuts to say overtime, you're just not replacing 2 people, not just, but I mean,
Right.
that's,
Yes,
to get up to that 104,000,
yes.
which is that.
Because that's another 34 above scenario 2.
Right. Yes, I can't see you, see yes?
So scenario 1 does include still the addition of one police officer?
The what?
Scenario 1 includes the hiring of one police officer?
No, this isn't
No,
a
it's
hiring.
cutting existing.
This is a cutting.
Because it says just
Right.
with the attrition of 2.
So
the
2
way
are
I'm reading it,
retiring.
So 2 retiring, if you're only reducing it by 1 to attrition, it implies that you're backfilling the other.
That's
Yes,
Correct.
yes,
Keep his,
But
Yes.
You're gonna hire one person to replace a retiring.
yes,
right.
yes.
Not adding staff,
Right.
it's just not hiring somebody.
You're replacing the retirees, yes. But in the full deficit, you would not be replacing 2 retirees. I believe there's even more than 2 coming up.
So if we go with the fact that maybe there are 4 retiring this year, if we go with scenario 1, 4 still retire, and we only hire
Replace
3.
three.
In the actual full deficit, 4 still retire throughout the year, and we only replace 2. Thanks.
Now the fire chief. Scenario 1. The fire chief has indicated that he would furlough in order to save some money. In addition to reducing overtime usage by not filling shifts and reducing the number of people called back when the station house empties out on a call. And as you can clearly see, that is impact bargaining. The
Oh, and if I'm looking across the way, it's the same definition.
It's just more of
It's
it.
just more reducing of
Yes.
overtime, more impact bargaining.
Yes.
Yeah, please, John, feel free to.
Do you want to
come up.
Do you want to come up?
Be brief with.
So you can still stay up here, grab a chair.
Really, the difference on these 3, because it's the same narrative, it appears it's the same impact, but it's not, because it's going to be the length of time that we're reduced with the number of manpower. This is assuming that impact bargaining will not bring any changes. I'm hoping it will. Perhaps it won't. I have to assume that the union will not make any voluntary concessions. That being said, and that could change if they made any concessions, I have to assume the worst-case scenario, which would be to reduce the overall number of personnel on a shift. To take the entire cut, whether it be whichever scenario it would be, depending on the budget figure, directly out of the overtime account, which would mean selectively, not at every shift, but on certain shifts, I would reduce the number of on-duty personnel from the current 5 to 4. The difference with how we've traditionally done this is I will maintain Station 2 being open. So basically, you're going to lose your ladder driver if there's a vacancy on that shift. I would only do this on night shifts, and it would only be Monday through Thursday. The reason behind that is traditionally, they tend to be the least busiest times that we have. Now, that certainly doesn't say that we're not going to get a fire on a Tuesday night or multiple medical emergencies. I cannot control that. Overall, nights are, for the fire department, nights are less busier than days, and weekdays, not including Friday nights, are less busy than weekends. So that would be, I think it's a risk-benefit I'd be willing to take. I don't want to do this because anytime we reduce personnel, or shift strength, I should say, we're introducing or exposing both the town residents as well as the firefighters to risk. I'm not going to sit here and tell you, all these horrible things are going to happen. We may just get through this and we may be fortunate. However, we are exposing ourselves to risk. The main areas of risk on this is, number 1, we'd have 4 firefighters going out instead of 5. That 5th one traditionally, or usually, in this case, would be driving a ladder truck. That's a single person, so we're not going out the door with a ladder truck. Yes, we can get a ladder mutual aid, but you've got time restraint at that point. And at a fire scene operationally, you try to get your ladder truck there sooner before the fire scene gets boxed in with other vehicles, and there's only 100 feet of ladder as opposed to 1,000 feet of hose. So you want to get your truck there sooner. The real risk, I think, that we're going to see with this is multiple calls, which happens consistently, meaning you get more than one emergency occurring at the same time. I've lost that 5th person now to go out on a second call to take care of that, to get somebody started. Yes, we're still getting mutual aid. However, there is going to be a time delay. And at some point, we can't expect the surrounding communities to cover Abington shortfall. Mutual aid is going to be mutual. The length of time we'd be doing this between the 3 is a difference really between, for the shortest dollar figure, it's about 75 night shifts. Scenario 2 would be roughly 100 night shifts, and scenario 3 is about 145, 150 night shifts. I have to be careful with this because this is not something I want to do through the winter months. If I don't use up all of these night shifts in the fall, in the summer and the fall, I'm going to curtail this. We're going to get through the winter months, and then we'll pick it up again in the spring. It's just not safe enough not to have a ladder truck during the winter months. We have more chimney fires, as well as to you know, you're not gonna get the off-duty help to come in during a snowstorm to help cover these shortfalls. So that's how I'm proposing to do this, and I'm hoping we'll take a one-time, hopefully it's a temporary cut, we'll get through it and move on. I don't want to see the fire department devastated like we've had in previous cuts, previous years. I'm still going to maintain personnel, I'm still going to maintain Station 2. FY14 is a tough year for us, as I explained to this before. I have 3 firefighters going to the Mass Fire Academy. That's a total of 27 weeks, which we have to also fill their shifts with overtime. That's mainly due to retirements we just had in FY13. So hopefully we can get through this.
Can I,
Go ahead.
unless anyone has questions about that, wanted to ask something about something different.
No, going totally off this, or are you?
A little bit, yeah.
All right, I was gonna ask, when you talk about reducing the shift from 4 to 5, you reducing EMTs, does it impact ambulance service?
No.
That was my only question.
I had something written down where I wanted to ask you. Oh, because it was on the warrant articles, so I'm just trying to,
Okay.
while we have you here,
Sure.
make the best of our time. The antenna,
Mhm.
I know you can't do it the way that you had originally hoped, which is putting it on top of the building.
Correct.
So you need to have a structure built and then the antenna on top of that. The structure and the antenna itself, is that like a single?
What we're trying to do, we had money, we raised and appropriated money last year for the fire department to replace our antenna. Our antenna mast at Station 1 was severely damaged in one of the winter storms a couple years ago. It's about 25 years old, if probably not older. It's got to be replaced. The amount of antennas we have now just don't support it. We were hoping to get an antenna and put it on the roof of the apparatus floor. We're moving towards that. I did have estimates to do that. When they went in to do that, they discovered the engineering just didn't match up with that. They thought it was going to initially. When they get into it, there was too much flex. In order to do it, we still could have done that. However, we would have had the have guy wires down that affected lands next to us that we don't know if we own. It was really not doable at that point. The additional monies that I'm requesting now would be to build a concrete foundation behind the station, and we do it that way instead.
And is it a single?
It's a single
broad
mast, correct.
Mast antenna, and
That will be the structure, and then all the antennas will be migrated onto that structure.
what do you mean?
Well, we're building that mast, but then the actual little antenna is kind of attached to that mast. We have to build that antenna structure.
Big. What I'm getting at is what do the neighbors think?
The height shouldn't be that much greater than what we have now anyway. I didn't poll the neighbors.
I'm just wondering, like, is it going to be a problem, like an eyesore for neighbors? Is it something that may cause an issue?
I think we're zoned for it anyway. We have the same antennas all up and down 18, but I have not polled the neighbors. We have, if you look at the roof at Station 1 now, we have, it's going to look better than it does now, but
Question?
Question on this.
sure.
The reduction, it was a result of the reduction of the ladder driver.
Mhm.
What does it go from response time now to the response time usually for that ladder?
Upwards 4 to 5 minutes, 6 minutes, depending. Depends on where the fire is located in Abington. If Abington has a fire, we subdivide the town in different quadrants, different regions. If it's up in the Musterfield area, usually that's Rockland. If it's up North Quincy Street, that would usually be Holbrook, before Brockton and Weymouth. We try to do the towns before the cities because they're busier. And the southern end would be Whitman. Now, assuming either Rockland, Whitman, or Holbrook, or if needed, Weymouth or Brockton are available, because we may be closer to their towns. Whitman may have a couple calls going on, or Rockland. Or if we're getting hit during one of these storms, we're all on our own anyway. At that point, I end up bringing off-duty personnel, I think, to cover that. But so your time could vary. Right now, our average response time for most of the town of Abington is about 4 minutes. We'd definitely be exceeding that for a ladder truck, or for a second call. It's that ladder driver, he actually switches to an engine if it's a second medical emergency, to save wear and tear on the ladder. But he's definitely going to get there sooner than would be a mutual aid engine or ambulance or both. And we'd still be calling in off-duty help, but that takes time to get there too. Last night or the night before, we had a medical emergency on North Quincy Street at the same time as a medical emergency on Walnut Street, complete opposite ends of town, and then we had a third medical emergency come in within 2 minutes of that. That's just a typical weeknight. We're busy. So this is not something I want to do, certainly. None of us want to take the cuts, but in looking overall, I'm trying to have the shortest possible impact and length of time with the budget reduction that we have.
Has any other questions? Any other impact? Right, great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, John.
Thanks. Okay. All right, next one is building inspector. Okay, good.
Under the first scenario, the building inspector indicated that they would reduce the fuel and repairs budget on his vehicle and would have no coverage in the event that the building inspector is off-duty. I guess right now there's some funds in there in the event that a building inspector from another town would need to be called in or something of that nature, which would only be, I think, in an emergency type situations, but either that or it is during absentees and normal coverage. I don't actually recall specifically. Under scenario 2, it would be those items, but also he would reduce some of his education budget. And under the full scenario, it would be all of those, a little bit more education, some license, educational training, licenses to travel, and call-outs.
So it's education, training, licenses, travel, and what?
Call-outs. The building inspector can be called out for emergencies, things of that nature. So I think he's gambling. So he's got money in the budget for that. So I think it's a gamble, as any expense that we cut at this stage is, that there would be fewer call-outs for those type situations.
This would also, if you went on vacation for a week.
Well, he's also indicated in his responses that he wouldn't be able to take a week at a time. So he would not plan to take a week at a time. He would take a couple days, maybe wrapped around a weekend or something of that nature. That's
Which we just wouldn't have coverage
position
for.
that he'd be in if he has to reduce the coverage portion of the budget.
Okay. Anything else anyone needs to ask? No? No? Okay. All right, the next three.
The next three are really pretty small items. They're minimal effects to the budgets of these individuals, so they would just be reduced from expense lines.
Okay.
The school department, I have just some high-level information. They did not want to provide any real specific details for a lot of reasons. One, of course, being that they have not met with their own school committee on these items, and they feel strongly that they would need to do that first before being able to put a great deal of detail to this. However, in discussions with the school superintendent, if we did scenario 1, it is his belief that we could save all staff and that they could find something to reduce. Again, I just can't tell you what that is, but it would not be people and positions. If we went to scenario 2, it is his estimate that we would have to be looking at 1 to 3 positions. And if we went to the full deficit, it would be 11.1 positions, which of course gets you into the scenario of having an impact with your accreditation. Class sizes would be extremely large. There'd be an increase in study halls, as there was back in the years when they had to cut a lot of people. So those effects are much more significant. I suspect there will be more detail after they've been able to discuss these types of issues with their school committee. And I'm certain that they would then attend. In fact, I believe it was today that they would have attended, but they've already got a commitment of some type of negotiations that had been set for today
Okay, so,
prior
but,
to this meeting being scheduled.
a couple questions. When it says either reducing the 1 to 3 positions or the 11.1 position
Yes.
on scenario 2 or the full scenario, is that just to reach this number? Because we all know if they reduce, then we've got,
Well, that's the reason that scenario, that the full deficit is so large, because they've had to take into consideration the unemployment
Yes,
effects.
that's where I
And
was
so
going.
they've had to
Up that
increase
number.
the number of positions that would have to be let go in order to get to.
cover both of the...
That is correct.
Okay, that's where I was
Yes.
going with that. Okay. Sean, did you have a question? Okay. All right, yeah, because, I mean, obviously it's a big budget, so it's big cuts. And also, I mean, then you're in a position where, yeah, you're looking to the next year, too. I mean, all of these budgets, we take a look at what these, this 1 year situation that we're in, and how is that going to flow into the following year,
Right.
so. Okay, and, yeah, like you said, I know they do have to meet with their school department. I can't remember, I think they were meeting on like the 26th or something. I forget what the date was. I had it written down. No, that would be, anyway. But I think they might be trying to schedule something in the meantime, too.
I would
Because
hope.
because we have to put these numbers together by like the 24th or something, so.
Yeah, I would hope that
They're probably putting something together. I don't know when, though. Okay, so, but scenario 1, they feel that they could
Save
do
all
this based
positions.
on something, but without reducing any positions.
Mhm.
Okay. I mean, which isn't to say there would be no impact, because it would be $367,000
Exactly.
of impact,
yes,
so I don't
yes.
want
A number
anyone to
that
get away,
large.
coming away thinking, oh, then it's no impact. It is definitely an impact. It's just to whatever the definition of that impact is, which we
Yes.
don't have that.
But you heard the commitment last week, which was to save positions.
Yes,
I mean, that's extremely important.
absolutely. Okay, thank you.
On the highway.
And just to mention, South Shore Regional Vocational, we can't adjust that at all anyway, because that has been our assessment. And I did hear that, I don't know if it's 5 of the towns, all the towns that have had town meetings have obviously approved those. So we're not in a position where any other town is calling into question those assessments. I did hear that, so, okay, thank you.
Sure.
Highway.
Brings us to highway. The highway superintendent has indicated that we'd have to reduce a full-time position and a part-time position. For scenario 1, full-time and a part-time.
Reduce 1 full-time position and 1 part.
Is that right? Okay, so a full-time position wouldn't cover, well, I guess with the impacts of,
It's,
He's including the healthcare, that's why he's,
the unemployment?
I mean,
The
unemployment, yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry, he is?
Yes, he is.
So in order to hit that, for instance, that 38,000, he'd have to reduce 1 full-time and 1 part-time to cover not only the 38, but also the cost of the overtime. The unemployment, I'm sorry, yeah.
Okay. And scenario 2 is...
Can I just ask one question?
Sure.
That's, even though we're calling it highway again, it's highway, but it's highway and parks.
No, this is highway.
This is just highway.
Parks is another line item down a little lower.
Okay. That's
But we've-
recreation a little further down.
We've shifted the responsibilities of park over to the highway,
It's
so.
a little confusing. What's
Yeah.
been shifted over was the maintenance of the grounds.
Yes.
The park still has other activities, such as the opening of the pool and things of that nature, that it's unclear where those reside. Temporarily, at least, the highway superintendent has been picking up those activities, but I don't know that it has been firmly settled as to what's going to happen with that. So frankly, it's a little confusing at this
But the
point in
work's
time.
being done through the highway.
So
Um,
all,
Because
we'll just
there's
say all
no-
work.
Yeah, the maintenance of the parks is currently being done by the highway. Exactly.
But the opening,
Grove, which is
And the
gonna be a big question people are gonna ask, because it's that time of year that's
yeah, but
being overseen by the highway.
it is right now, yes, but it's still under a park and recreation line. There's still a full budget there, the full account numbers and
Right.
things. The opening of Island Grove, the putting in of the docks, that is not mowing lawns and maintaining fields. Those are park and rec activities. Those are, at this point in time, being covered by, the supervision of those is being covered by the superintendent of highways. The final determination of what's going to happen hasn't really yet been solidified. And I think it was the hope that the new town manager would be here, or they knew that he'd be starting originally, they thought in May, and that it would be left to him to determine what happens there. So that's been somewhat delayed, creating a little bit of confusion.
And let's just, if I can say this much, the Grove opens in this fiscal year.
Yes, it does.
So if we're talking about, is there gonna be money to open the Grove or put in, that's next fiscal year.
Yes,
We're-
there's money
right?
there to cover what has to
This
happen
year.
in this fiscal year.
Right, so I just
Yes.
wanted to
Yes.
allay anybody's fears about
Mhm.
that. But the budget, the money to cover that up till June 30th is existing.
Yes, yes, and the people are in place and the work is
Yes.
moving forward,
Okay. But as we
under the
look to. as-
supervision of the
yeah.
highway superintendent.
Right.
Yes.
What we're talking about today is as we look from July 1st on, when the Grove will already be open and, again, fields are being mowed and that kind of thing, just all those other activities, which the soon-to-be town manager, when he gets in here, can make those decisions as to where all that resides, who's doing the work, okay. All right. So back to the highway, so including highway office, highway construction maintenance, snow ice removal, if you put, I think probably all that together is in that line item right up there. Because I don't see any adjustments to those other ones. So in scenario 1, which is 38,000, it's the reduction of 1 full-time position and 1 part-time. Those folks would be gone. So that's truly cutting. Do you guys know, do those people exist right now? I gotta ask that question. They do. So that is truly, it's not reducing hours, it's not, like up to this point, we've been talking about reducing hours, reducing overtime,
Mhm.
not hiring police officers who are retiring. This is the first time we're looking, in scenario 1 anyway, with reducing existing staff,
Mhm.
right? Okay. And then, okay, thank you. And then, so then going to scenario 2,
There now becomes 1 full-time and 2 part-time positions, in addition to a reduction in fuel and road marking line items.
work that is scheduled
So
to be
that's-
done for marking roads and that type of thing wouldn't get done. Okay. And then with the full deficit,
He has 2 full-time positions and 2 part-time positions.
does anyone know how many positions they have currently?
I didn't look to count.
Didn't he say he
Yeah,
has,
nine.
he has ability for 9, but he only has 7 in the positions.
Yeah.
Because there are some people that are still injured.
There's
Yes.
2 out on.
There are 2 on our
So,
workers' comp.
so there's currently the superintendent, the assistant superintendent, and 7?
No,
Or 5?
The office, this, an office,
Mechanic.
No,
Three
that's right.
laborers.
Yeah, I remember, it. Yeah.
And
I
then the
did go through
office,
that.
part-time administrative
I
clerk.
did, but I don't.
All
think-
together at
Yeah.
7, or all together at 7 plus?
7 plus the 2 he has a capacity for 9, but 2 are currently out on workers' comp.
Okay, I mean, we don't have to get to the actual number here, but I just want to try to talk about the fact that if there's 7 people, and even scenario 1 is cutting 2,
Mm-hmm. Yep, 1.5, yep.
and out of those 7, isn't one works in the office.
The part-time administrative clerk,
Right.
yes, works in the office.
So, as far as working
People-
out in the field or out in Abington, there's 6.
yeah,
Right.
We'd go to
4.
4.
Impact. Okay. All right. Any questions on that, you guys, so far? Okay,
That's one you might want to flush out more with
yeah,
bringing in the superintendent.
yes, I think that wouldn't be a bad idea. Accounting can't cover that. Okay.
Brings us to the Board of Health, and in scenario 1, it can be covered by a reduction in the grinding at the compost center, small reduction in the rabies clinic funding. Doesn't mean they wouldn't have it, they would, and the shop's disposable needle program.
Reduction in all those, not elimination of all
No, not
those?
elimination, no.
Okay. All right, so that's $2,100. That's scenario 1.
Yeah, and actually scenario 2 isn't an awful lot different from
It's
that, so therefore it'd be.
Additional reduction in,
Yeah, but it would be just a greater reduction in the grinding compost.
okay.
And the final one, an even greater reduction in the grinding at the
Right.
compost.
So that's basically, you take a look at those are services that are being offered, and a
Mhm.
reduction in those. Okay. All right,
And
nursing,
public health nursing would be a reduction in the nursing contract.
and they're in the process of redoing that contract right now, is that correct?
She was actually able to negotiate it down,
All right,
so she wouldn't be underfunding the contract.
okay,
Kudos to her.
okay. Yeah, because she reduced it from 20,000, I'm just looking at the budget, to 17, and then to reduce in any one of those things, you'd have to, somehow that would flow into the nursing contract, or use of the nurse, or whatever, so. Again, services that are being available now that would be reduced, again, I don't know, either somehow in the contract, and whether that contract is reducing the number of hours the nurse we use, or services, I don't know, but that's how she would absorb that. Okay. Any questions on that one? Okay. On to Council on Aging?
Council on Aging, the information that we received would be that they would reduce the postage, creating the need to continue to have that postage funded through the Abington Elders. In FY13, the postage line item was 0, and this organization covered the cost of all of those mailings and publications. In FY14, they were attempting to bring it on to the town's expense ledger, but they've indicated they'd have to cut that out, and I guess, again, ask for contributions or the funds from the Abington Elders.
Okay. Because that's,
And that would be, I guess, in scenario 2 as well.
and there's no guarantee they would get that from the elders, because as I read this, it would be a need to request it from the elders, which maybe they would get it as they have received it in the past. They were trying to not do that this year.
Yeah, I couldn't speak to whether it's a guarantee or not.
Okay. But they're comfortable enough that would be the plan.
This is what they put down as a plan, yes.
Okay.
So I don't know if they did the research to determine whether the Abington elders would in fact fund them. And in the worst case scenario, they would then also need some assistance from the Friends of Seniors to cover some costs. Now, when we received this information and we sat looking more closely at the budgets today, we noticed something, and I guess that there have been increases put in for some of the staff, and I'm not entirely clear on the history, but I guess that was something that resulted from discussion with the previous town manager and the director of the Council on Aging. And as I understand it, they did present to you folks, so you may actually have more information on that than I do.
I guess the question would be, are those salary increases, were they like the salary increases that we did last week? Pardon me?
They were for van drivers and
Yeah.
several of the people there.
Coordinators.
Yes.
So have they gone into effect yet?
No.
No.
No, they haven't. As I understand it, there's no paperwork on this. It was just, I guess through discussions, that it was suggested to the COA director to put these increases into the FY14 budget. And that's about as much as I know on it. Now, one of them happens to be for the COA director, and that person is covered by collective bargaining, so I don't think you can let that go through.
Let what go through? The increase?
Yes. That has to be negotiated through a union. So,
Okay.
in essence,
Yeah.
I guess
You
what I'm
can't just-
saying is that
you
those...
can't give a salary increase if they're in a union without collective
Right, so
bargaining.
those have to be looked at.
Yeah.
And there may, in fact, be, depending upon what's decided there, there may be money from the salary line that can absorb some of these. But it does have to be looked at more closely.
What union is that?
The director is covered under the Managers Association.
Was that agreement about salary before that director entered the...
There's no paperwork,
There's
as I
no-
understand it, so that means there is no agreement, that's just a discussion.
But
Well,
that all
that's-
changed, maybe that was a discussion that took place prior to the union completely being formed?
I don't,
Not really sure.
I don't know.
Timing.
But if it, I don't know. It needs further
Yeah.
analysis.
Just so that you know, in the FY14 budget, there are increases in
In
there.
those salaries?
Right, and others, the custodian and the workers, and those were put in at the recommendation of the town manager.
Was that during budget meetings? Like you were all present for that, or?
No, we
I don't
found out
recall
about
it
it today.
myself.
We didn't know anything about it till today.
Yeah. Go ahead, Rick.
I think that all came about when we were first building the budget. John came up with his very first budget,
Yeah.
and everybody put in what they wanted.
Okay.
And I think she thought that, just put that in, you're gonna get it.
Well, that's, I kind of remember it too, because it was similar
Yeah.
to like,
Because he said 4 police officers, 2 highway guys,
Right.
yeah.
you know,
Right.
none of
I
that's
would
in
look
here.
That
now.
out,
Right.
right.
I
Yeah,
would
that was-
compare it to that. That's my
Right.
recollection of it as well. I was gonna say the same way, like you said, you know, 2 highway guys and whatever, but, and put it in. Similar to, I mean, I remember even like the, some people asking for an additional inspector for, you know, Board of Health and this, I remember certain parts of the conversations that we had, and, but, so having said that, if those are the, and I have the information here too, about salaries being restored to the previous director's pay level, nutrition coordinator should be the same level as the transportation coordinators, custodian pay level increase, because it hadn't been in 5 years, COA drivers. So that is the thing that I was kind of, sort of questioning was, if those salary increases are in there, are there other salary, I don't think there's other salary increases,
I don't think that we've covered any line items where there are so far.
okay.
A little lower, I want to make a point
Okay.
on one other group.
Let me get
But
this,
I'm
I
not
got
aware
that
of
too,
any
so.
others
Okay.
for what we've covered.
Okay, so that number might be something that is definitely something we have to look into a little further.
Yes.
If that, on the COA, that 2014, excuse me, the 2014 budget item. Fine. Thank you very much for looking into that a little bit. Okay. Anyone want to ask any questions? We're going to have to follow up on that. Okay? All right, go ahead.
That brings us to veterans, and these amounts, we believe, can be covered by a small reduction in the veterans benefit line, not in a particular veterans benefit.
Right.
It's the amount available for
Thus
veterans'
far,
benefits.
we've looked back and we haven't seen that they've ever approached the maximum of what is funded in that line. And so each one of these reductions would reduce it, of course.
Further and further.
You know, there was always some thought that with the war kind of winding down, you know, you might need more money, but that, again, like many other things, is an estimate.
Right. You're going on an estimate of what we anticipate and, you know, having to take that risk of reducing that estimate.
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Library.
Okay. The library's
I'll
here too.
start, you can finish if you need to. The library, of course, they're at certification level right now in their budgeting, as I understand it, so any reductions requires a waiver from the state. The first phase would be library materials, which would then be below the state minimum and would require that waiver. If they go to the second scenario, it's the same thing, basically. It's just that it would be further reduced. If they go to the full deficit, waiver would need, for state certification, one part-time position, lost, reduction of hours, library materials below the state minimum, so forth and so on. Which, since Deb is here,
Yeah.
I'm going to let you have at her in 1 second.
Okay.
It's just that this is the other area that I wanted to mention that, similar to the Council on Aging, I guess earlier on in the very first pass, there were the same types of conversations about increases for non-union personnel. However, and I want you to know that in case you look back at your original budgets. However, in April, there was a reduction to the library, which was just plugged in as a lump number because it wasn't itemized as to where that was going to go at the time that reduction was made by the previous town manager. And in conversations with Deb, she has taken out all of those potential increases that were in that original budget. So it's back to square one, other than a union step level negotiated contract type of modifications that exist.
Okay. So the FY 2014 budget that we're looking at here for library, the 452,714 does not have
There are no
those increases that had been talked
non-union
about with
personnel
John.
that isn't
other
already a
than-
contractual obligation.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Okay. Deb, did you want to come up?
Sure. You explained that really well.
Gee, thanks.
You did a good job. I did want to just make sure everybody did understand that particular thing. And out of respect for the library union staff and my non-union staff, I would like to point out that we are going into the first day of fiscal 14 at the exact same rate of pay for the entire library staff as on the first day of fiscal 2010. It is what it is. And other than that, in terms of library materials being below state minimum requirements, state aid is made up of multiple parts. The materials expenditure requirement, obviously I have no guarantees, but I'm quite confident that with donations and the Friends of the Library will be able to make up the amount. So I wanted to be very clear. A waiver would be needed for state certification. It is very much my professional opinion that a waiver will be forthcoming. Just so we are all on the same page. I do not feel that the library is in danger of losing certification. As you cut the budget, the danger increases, but it's scenario 1 and scenario 2. I am 100% confident that we will get, maybe I should say 98, that we will get a waiver.
Deb, so the waiver would be needed regardless of whether or not donations came in, because it's based upon what the budget from the town is. I just wanted to be clear.
Yes, there are multiple parts. There's the municipal appropriation requirement, which is the budget, and which is $452,714 for fiscal 14. There's the materials expenditure requirement, which essentially says you have to expend 15% of your municipal appropriation on materials for patron use, books, ebooks, DVDs, and so on. There's the hours open requirement, which means you have to be open the appropriate number of hours for your population group. And lastly is the education requirement for the library director. In a town the size of Abington, the library director has to have a master's in library and information science. So clearly dropping below the state minimum is not a good idea. And I don't want to do that, but clearly we're going to. So that's, I don't think anybody's happy, but we all have to do what we can. The other thing is, in terms of the part-time position, that would be a non-union position. I did not account for unemployment because I am hoping to spread the hours among a couple of people, and I think that would probably work. I think I've got somebody who would voluntarily, I have had a staff member indicate that they will voluntarily reduce their hours.
That's why
A
it says one
non-union
part-time
staff
person's
member, yeah.
loss slash
So that's-
reduction.
yes.
You'd prefer to keep that person here and spread the reduction of hours.
Yes, so I'm hoping that that would not happen. There was no way to fit that into a box on an Excel spreadsheet.
That's why you're here.
Yes, so anyway, we do have one person who has indicated they would be willing to talk about reducing their hours voluntarily, in which case I think that would mean we would not lose a position. We would just reallocate. We would have people with fewer hours. Did I make it muddy or clear?
Oh, I think clear. Clear. Any questions, you guys? No?
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Deb.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. And now we're into recreation.
Recreation,
Welcome back,
this is the park part that we were talking about a little bit earlier.
Yep.
It still does have its own separate budget. It's got some part-time labor positions in there. It has a superintendent's salary in there. It has some people, of course, that have to draw on that. I don't know his proper title, but Peter Serino is kind of overseeing the programs again.
Right.
So he's got to be paid out of that line item.
Right.
There's money in there for Kate Marino, who is doing some work in that respect.
It's an admin, right?
Yeah, she's more of an administrative type of a position. And it's, again, not completely clear to me what the new town manager would be doing with that position. And so that's why it's a little hard to explain and a little
Yeah.
dicey and
So-
up in the air.
So basically, with the superintendent's salary that's in there, it's in there, though there's nobody working in that role currently. We have
Correct.
Correct. Pete Serino, who's doing
Yes.
some and drawing upon
Yes.
some of that salary.
That's right.
Katie, who's drawing upon some of that salary. But
Right.
eventually, ultimately, depending upon what the new town manager wants to do, that's why there's money in there. But these scenarios would affect a reduction in
does
that
affect
which
some
is
of it,
being
yes.
held for that person.
So right now, as I recall, there is there is a line item for the superintendent's salary, if you will, and there's a line item for the administrative salary, Kate Marini's. There is no line item for Peter Serino, so he's got to draw out of that superintendent's salary. There is a line item for 2 part-time laborers for some period of time. So all that's in there right now.
Okay.
But it's a little unsettled as to what it will look like in its finality.
And any other salaries that fall under recreation, are basically the costs associated with the
Programs paid
doing
for.
programs?
Yes, there'll be a lot of lifeguards and camp counselors and things of that nature, but it's paid from a revolving,
Offset by the folks who
Fees.
sign up for the Grove or do a program. So, okay. Any questions about that, guys? All right.
well, we're down to the last two, and they all say minimal effect.
Yeah, minimal effect. Okay. All right. So based on all those things that we talked about, and I know, and I very much thank you guys, and thank you to the department heads and everybody who worked on this. Based upon these scenarios, your feeling is as painful as some of these impacts would be, this is we could cover that, we could close that $1.1 million. Based upon these scenarios, either taking money from stabilization, taking more money from stabilization, taking no money from stabilization. This is right now, this would be the potential 3 plans.
Well, this is
That's it.
the blueprint, as I think, and I hope it has been expressed. Some are extremely more painful than others. Some are absolutely devastating to the town and not a place where I'd like to go again.
Yeah. Agreed.
But even the most favorable scenario is not going to be easy to achieve and will impact services.
I think that's the absolute point to it, is going to affect services. It's going to, at minimum, it's going to affect the things that we wanted to do in 2014. It's absolutely going to affect how things are right now. And in the worst case, it's going to affect people who are, staff and salaries, so.
And in our opinion, we feel that scenario 1 is the best option for the town at this point. I want to make that clear.
Board of Selectmen, I know you guys are here. Did you guys meet this week? Did you guys talk about
No,
the scenario?
it's Monday.
It's Monday, okay.
That's because we've had no time between.
Right.
Oh, that's right, because we talked about that yesterday. There hasn't been a Monday yet, believe it or not. It was in my mind. Well, in case you were wondering, hopefully you guys will talk about that Monday, and then we'll know Tuesday or Wednesday, whatever day today is. So you guys are meeting on Monday, for sure. Okay. You guys, any other questions? Anything, you want to digest this and, Sean, yes? Speak up.
Yes, we can.
Good point, thank you.
In fact, I don't think you were here when I said, you folks are seeing it first. We haven't even emailed what we compiled back to the department heads. But it was put together based on information they gave us. So,
It'll actually help offset ticket tie to the fingers hitting the side of that. So it'll be a little easier. I have a couple of ideas. Might actually minimize some of the impacts, but it'll be easier.
sure. Okay. We have his email address?
Well, because the specific question, honestly, is just overall, if I were to look at the net percent change in each budget line based on FY13 compared to the town manager budget, even with scenario 1, scenario 2 of the total deficit, we're just hoping to see what that percent impact would be. Because you'll notice that trying to preserve and protect services, right, this is not level funded budgets, this is trying to get a level of level servicing and minimize impacts. Some wanted to be level service, some actually wound up taking a deficit, as the library just pointed out, that if any of those scenarios actually results in less funding in FY13, and there are some strategies to consider. So I'm just truly looking at all the numbers and all the impacts. I think they're very real, very tangible, and very appreciable. But unfortunately, I read like, I read a lot of red like it's Sanskrit. But it would be easier to have the numbers and be able to kind of present a more cogent and coherent suggestion back.
Okay.
Other questions, comments, requests? Nope. Okay, all right, guys, thank you very, very much again. Thank you.
So next meeting.
Oh, yes, when are we meeting again? We don't have any other meetings scheduled for this week, and I can't post any, so we don't have time, but what would work for you? I mean, we did Tuesday yesterday,
What,
Wednesday is our normal day.
what's your thought on what the next meeting should be covering? Obviously, budget and warrant, but
Yeah.
any more pointed?
I mean, I would be very well, you guys can talk, but I think we probably need to get some of the, I would welcome any department head who wants to come in, like you guys came in tonight. Particularly schools, I don't know if they're gonna have time to meet.
Well, would
with
you,
their folks.
would you know if, could you
Highway.
identify the departments that you'd definitely like to speak to? I mean, some of these, I
Yeah,
don't think.
Maybe we
Yeah.
can
need
do
to
that
commit.
through some discussion.
Yeah, we can do that here, and I can send you something. I mean, right off the bat, I'd say highway.
Yeah.
That would be one of my first ones I'd wanna make sure we talk to. But we'll discuss that, we'll let you guys go, and I'll send you an email and let you know.
That works.
So are we talking, do you think we're talking, I mean, we could do Tuesday, I know that's not good for Sean. Wednesday, we're generally all here. Thursday's not good for some other people, but as long as we can get 5 here.
Wednesday?
For sure Wednesday.
This gives us the night between the selectmen's meeting and,
Oh, that's true, because you guys can, okay.
Your recommendations need to be done by when, though?
At the latest, they have to be done by the 31st, which is 10 days before June 10th. Personally, I am not around that week. That's the week of Memorial Day, so that cuts off a day anyway. If you want to look at my calendar, this is the day we have to have them done, 31st. That's 10 days before June 10th. This is Memorial Day here, so there are 4 days in that week that could be done. I would like to have them by the 24th, so that we could get them posted. But if you guys could still wrap things up, and someone would just have to get the recommendations posted by the 31st. Here we are, we're here on the 8th, so we've got next week and the following week, two full weeks. So if we plan on meeting the 15th, and we need more time, we still have the following week, but we're just running,
Can I make a suggestion?
Certainly.
Sounds like Sean might have some additional ideas.
Yep.
So maybe meet or post for 2 nights next week, just in case his ideas now need to go back
Further
out. And
vetted.
yeah.
Okay, yep. And Sean, you can't do the 14th, right?
I know now I can actually make arrangements for the 14th to change that Thursday, so going on the 14th and 15th, we can do that.
14th and 15th, we could do that. When are you gone?
I'm gone the 20th.
You leave the 20th. Okay, so you're out that whole week,
So does Chad.
and you're out that week too?
I'm out the 20th through the 22nd. I'll be back the night of the 22nd.
Okay, all right. So,
I'm off the 22nd.
okay. See, nobody planned on going this
I'm
late.
gonna be out from now till the 31st.
But it's a furlough, so.
Yeah, so there you go. All right, so based upon all of that, I think we absolutely probably need to post at least for Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. Sorry, I know you guys are gonna be Monday busy with the Board of Selectmen, but go ahead, speak up.
Chad's saying, do you want to shoot for Thursday also?
Sure. Well, yeah, we can do that. I can
And then
post for
post
Thursday.
those.
I can post that, if we make that decision on Tuesday, no, I can't do it Tuesday, I'd have to do it Monday. So, yeah, I will probably post for all 3 and we'll see where we go. I have to make sure we have rooms too. So hopefully we won't be here all 3, but it's better to have them posted and then we can meet versus needing to meet and then we can't. Especially because if Sean's gonna be gone some days, and Chad's gonna be gone some days, and Cindy's gone some days, and then I'm gone the following week, we get into making sure we have 5 here also, so. Thank you very much, I'm sorry.
Some cell phone votes.
But the goal being, if we could get it all done by the 24th, then you guys don't have to meet with us the week of Memorial Day, or the following week. Okay? Thank you, thank you, thank you guys, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right, so I'm gonna
Thank
post
you,
for
sir.
those 3 days. Got a clean version, okay. I don't know how much more we have to talk about tonight since we were here last night at this time, but so to wrap up, I'm gonna post for the 14th, 15th, and 16th. Board of Selectmen is meeting on the 13th. On the 13th, they'll be talking about some of these budget things, and they're gonna be talking about warrant. Also, next week, I need to bring in the 2 petitioners, and I'm trying to get the town council in. I just haven't heard which day is best for the town council to come in. So, at least now I know it can be probably either Wednesday or Thursday. So anyway, I'll get back to you on that. Yes?
We need to, if town council can come in on Tuesday, we do some of the articles. And then if we have some thoughts that we can bring up to them on Wednesday, it would give us kind of time if they don't want, if they can't be here, don't want to be here, to kind of maybe put our own thoughts in order before we all get together.
These guys? Yeah, I think that if they're thinking that Sean might have some suggestions on Tuesday, I think they want to hear those so that they would have Wednesday, Thursday, so that they would have enough time, so.
Yeah, 'cause I didn't know whether if it was Tuesday or if they, if he had ideas and kind of blew them by, like we talked about different things. and
Yeah,
then
that's
bring it to
true.
them Wednesday and then have Thursday, Friday.
We could do that.
The following, but it just
I
gives
see- I
us
see what
a-
you're saying.
It just gives us a little
As
bit of
a-
time to digest and talk amongst ourselves a little too.
Yeah.
I
You like that?
I like that. I also am concerned with getting department heads in, that we have, getting them a list of,
How many do we really need? Highway.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that right now. We need,
I would say-
which departments do we think we need to speak with directly?
I would definitely say any department that's losing personnel and not being able to hire personnel that they're losing. So I would say police and highway.
Yeah,
What was that?
police.
Police and highway.
We're talking about departments that we believe we need to meet with directly.
Okay, so police, highway, I don't want to miss anyone.
Guys, sideboard over there. Sorry, thank you. Yeah, police and highway are the ones that we are thinking of. Can you guys think of anybody else that you think we need to bring departments in who are?
Do we need council on aging?
Yes, I think
Yeah.
we need COA, thank you. How did we miss that? Schools, I think we're gonna need them in, but I don't think that they will be ready to come in until they meet. Well, I'll send something out to, I will send something out to Peter and to Felicia and ask them when they think they could come in and discuss this. We have to, I mean, they've got the biggest budget, we can't not meet with them. So, anything else that we're thinking of? Police, we just met with fire. Highway. Board of Health seems to be okay with things. Library was here tonight.
So I would say
That,
those.
so those are the 4 departments that we need to bring in, highway, police, COA, and schools. In addition, like I said, we need petitioners,
Petitioners.
and town council at the same time as the petitioners. Okay, and then Cindy's idea, Sean, based on the fact that you have some ideas, and others might have ideas too, is whether we should meet amongst ourselves to go over, your ideas without all these guys here. I mean, obviously, open meeting and all that. Can we fit this all in next week? Can we meet amongst ourselves, then bring the finance team in on Wednesday and Thursday, if you will, to go over those things, and bring in the department heads, and bring in the petitioners?
If the department heads come in on, say they came in Tuesday at the very beginning of the meeting, if they can come, and just let them
Speak to this.
speak to the point, and give the, and not say that you have to cut them off, but just try to keep them succinct. Maybe for the first hour, if there's 4 of them, they each have 15 minutes or something like that, that they can kind of give us,
Okay.
and then that gives us another hour to just kind of, again, digest, hear what Sean might have to say. And just, sometimes it just seems better to be able to kind of flow amongst ourselves
I
without
agree,
having
no.
other people.
So
I
think that's
do
a
agree
good
with-
too, to do a quick.
So maybe bring these 4 departments in, if they can come in Tuesday night, spend an hour with them, if you will. And whether or not these guys want to come, but then those guys leave and we discuss whatever alternative ideas, I'm gonna say Sean, but that this group comes up with. And then on Wednesday,
then we'll have something that we can
Yeah,
present.
Wednesday, we can talk to these guys about the,
And see their thoughts on it.
and also, you know, at the end of that, we could have the petitioners, or maybe we do the petitioners
Beginning of
at the beginning,
Wednesday,
so I can
and
get
then
rid of the
town
attorney.
council.
Yeah, you don't.
Yeah. But again, we have to keep things moving along, all of these things, not to cut anybody off, but we have to keep things moving along where we got a short
That's why I'm
period of time.
thinking maybe let the department
Wednesday.
heads know that it's 15 minutes, let the petitioners know that it's,
15
you know,
minutes or whatever.
15 minutes
And then,
to get the questions in and their point across.
then follow up on late, after that happens on Wednesday, have the finance team. And we can have our thoughts that we go over on Tuesday, as well as their follow-up thoughts. And then if we have to meet on Thursday, we'll see what
discussion, yeah.
falls out of Tuesday and Wednesday, we would have to deal with on Thursday.
One suggestion, frankly, is with the spreadsheet, because the paper is grand. but
Yeah.
It's really not, it's not dynamic. So the
Mhm.
idea, frankly, is just to have it here. My only suggestion, quite honestly, initially, aside from my own comments, is, I believe personally that there's going to be some mixtures of scenario 1 and 2 blended together, which will actually give us the most optimal solution to not reduce services, protect those vulnerable populations, and ensure our public safety highway and those core services are indeed indemnified appropriately. But you can't do that with all the discussions. A lot of
No.
stuff, as Cindy pointed out, I took it as, in the absence of anything succinct report, there's a lot of emotion and passion that kind of gets mixed in a lot of these memories. So my suggestion is, they can empower the little projector here, so we can just literally look at the spreadsheet, but with our computer that we have.
Yep.
Look at the spreadsheet and just make those changes, say, okay, if we were to suggest this,
What's
what
the
is the true impact? Because there still is a % increase in nearly every budget. Even with these scenarios, there's a % increase in every budget. Some of it's contractual based, some
Yep.
of it is just, cost of living type adjustments. Some of it's necessary adjustments, like the fiscal cliff with regards to the schools, some of it's adjustments with regards to.
Even
there are
gas.
Some departments, frankly, that are cut below fiscal 13.
Yeah.
And so let's just look at those total impacts, and
Yeah.
that might be able to help guide the conversation a little better.
And Sue Moken said she will send that. She's not going to send it in a PDF format. Did we confirm that it's going to be?
She can send it in some sheet.
She will send it in a spreadsheet. Okay. Okay. So that's the plan? That's the plan. Tuesday, Wednesday, potentially Thursday. I will reach out to these guys and to those department heads and to the petitioners and try to tie down when council can be here as well, hopefully Wednesday, first thing. Okay? Anything else we have to do tonight? Oop, nope. I will entertain a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Okay, thank you, guys.
Oh, I can reach out to my departments.
Sure.
You guys, yeah.
You want me to, I'll send something to,
Yeah.